I never thought silence could hurt more than a scream, at least not until I saw the screen of Chloe's phone. It was a typical Sunday, the kind where the smell of roasted garlic and rosemary filled my kitchen. I'd spent the whole morning prepping lunch for my son Connor, his wife Chloe, and my daughter Harper. They were out on the patio soaking up the nice weather while I was slicing bread at the kitchen counter. Chloe had left her phone sitting right next to my cutting board. I'm not the type to snoop, but the screen suddenly lit up with a notification. The text was large enough for me to read without my glasses. It was from a group chat titled Family Baggage. The message was from my own daughter Harper. Do you think the martyr is done with her dry-ass chicken? Yet I'm starving. Right beneath it, Chloe had instantly replied with a row of laughing, crying emojis. I just stared at the screen until it went dark. A cold knot twisted in my stomach, but my hands didn't shake. For years, I'd suspected that my efforts were taken for granted, that my role in this family had been reduced to an unpaid chef maid and babysitter. But seeing it written down, archived in a group chat, they were all in behind my back, that was different. That was confirmation. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the knife or storm out to the patio to scream at them. Instead, I took the roasted chicken I had just pulled from the oven, wrapped it in foil, and shoved it straight into the fridge. I grabbed some plain sandwich bread, cold deli ham, and a few slices of cheese and tossed them on a paper plate. When they finally came inside to eat, Connor frowned. "What happened to lunch, Mom?" he asked, staring at the sad-looking sandwiches. "The oven's acting up," I replied with a calm that honestly surprised me. "You'll just have to make do with this today." Chloe eyed me sideways, looking for some hint of sarcasm or anger in my face, but she didn't find any. They ate in awkward silence, chewing on their discomfort. They had no idea that I already knew everything. But that cold lunch was just the beginning. The real test would come the following Sunday. 3 days later, my phone rang bright and early. It was Connor. He was using that rehearsed, overly gentle tone he gets whenever he wants a massive favor, but wants to pretend he's doing me one. He said they needed to have a family conversation at my house this weekend. He went on about how tired I'd been looking lately, how the house was just too much upkeep for one person, and how they wanted to help me relax. He made it sound like an act of pure love, like they were genuinely worried about my well-being. But all I could hear was the echo of that group chat in my head. "Sure, come over Sunday at 2, I said, keeping my voice perfectly level. I hung up and brewed a cup of tea. The house I lived in was the one my late husband and I had built together. 4 bedrooms, a sprawling backyard I tended to myself, and a roof that never leaked because I always stayed on top of the maintenance. For months, Connor and Chloe had been complaining about the rent at their apartment. I knew exactly where this family conversation was heading. They wanted the house. They wanted me to move into the tiny in-law suite out back, or maybe some cramped downtown condo. Instead of agonizing over it or drafting some speech to defend myself, I spent the rest of the week packing. I filled 3 suitcases with my clothes, my important documents, and the few photographs that actually meant something to me. I was completely quiet about it. I loaded everything into the trunk of my car, which I strategically parked out on the street, instead of in the garage. Then I went to the bank. I removed my name from the credit cards Connor used for emergencies. I canceled all the auto pays for the house, the electric bill, the landscaping service, and the high-speed gigabit internet Chloe demanded whenever she visited. If they wanted to take control, they were going to get the full experience. When Sunday rolled around, I made a pot of coffee. I set out clean mugs on the wooden dining table. I heard Connor's car pull up outside. They were walking in ready for a drawn-out negotiation, ready to wear me down and convince me it was for my own good. What they didn't know was that I had already made my decision and my foot was already out the door. They were actually on time, which was a first. Connor walked in, followed by Chloe and Harper. They took their seats around the dining table like they were settling in for a corporate board meeting. I stood for a moment pouring the coffee, just watching the dynamic. Chloe had this weird smirk on her face, a mix of impatience and early victory. Before anyone could bring up the house, Connor cleared his throat and pulled a small rectangular box from his jacket. He handed it to Chloe with a huge smile. "For you, babe. A little advance to celebrate our new chapter," he said. Chloe tore the box open and pulled out a brand new top-of-the-line smartphone. Her eyes lit up. She powered it on immediately, totally ignoring her coffee. It was such a ridiculous theatrical gesture, but I got the message loud and clear. It was a coronation. The new lady of the house needed the best gear. Connor turned to me, lacing his fingers together on the table. "Mom, we've been talking." He started using that patronizing tone that felt especially insulting coming from the son I still had to remind to go to the dentist. "This house is a burden on you. The property taxes, the cleaning, the yard. We hate seeing you stress over it. Chloe and I think it would be best if we moved in. We'd take over all the responsibilities. You could take that little rental condo downtown. It's smaller, way more manageable. It's for the best." Harper nodded, taking a sip of her coffee. "Yeah, Mom. It'd be great for us to have a central place to host holidays, and you're just not up for that kind of heavy lifting anymore." I looked at the three of them. None of them seemed remotely embarrassed about asking a widow to pack up her life just to accommodate their lifestyle. That downtown condo they were talking about was a drafty, dated rental unit we owned, with zero outdoor space. They wanted to exile me from my own hard work, package it as charity, and expect me to thank them for it. But the worst part wasn't the pitch itself. The worst part was happening right in front of me, just below the edge of the table where they thought I wasn't paying attention. While Connor droned on about the perks of downtown living and how much rest I was going to get, I caught the movement. Chloe's new phone was resting on her lap, and her thumbs were flying. A second later, Harper's phone lit up on the table. Harper glanced down, bit her lip to hold back a smile, and quickly looked back up with fake seriousness. They were live texting the meeting. They were using that same group chat to mock my silence, my reaction, me. At my own dining table, while actively plotting to take my home, they couldn't resist turning me into a punchline. "So what do you think, Mom?" Connor asked, noticing I hadn't said a word. "We just want to make this easy. But sometimes—" He sighed as if my quietness was some heavy cross he had to bear. "Sometimes you're just too difficult to reward. We're doing this for you, and it's like you don't even appreciate it." Too difficult to reward. The phrase just hung there in the air. He was guilt-tripping me for not giving him a standing ovation while he robbed me. I leaned back in my chair. My heart wasn't racing. I had spent days processing the sting, and all that was left now was a cold, absolute clarity. I looked at Chloe's shiny new phone, then at my daughter's smug face, and finally at Connor, the son who thought he was the man of the house while his wife spun cruel jokes right under his nose. "Are you talking about me in your group chat right now?" I asked. My tone was totally casual, like I was asking about the weather. The silence that hit the room was deafening. Chloe's thumbs froze. Harper coughed and quickly looked away. Connor just frowned, genuinely confused, because he probably wasn't even paying attention to his phone at that moment. "What group chat, Mom? You're imagining things," Chloe said quickly, recovering her posture, trying to play that old card where they make me feel like I'm losing my mind. But I wasn't going to play that game. I wasn't going to beg them for respect or demand to see their phones. They were waiting for me to cry, to get offended, to try and prove my worth to them. Instead, I reached into my cardigan pocket. I pulled out my metal keychain. I slid off the main key, heavy and brass, the one that had opened this front door for over 30 years. I held it in my hand for a second, feeling the cold metal against my palm, and then I dropped it dead in the center of the table. The sound of the brass hitting the wood cracked like a whip in the quiet room. "The house is yours," I said, standing up. All three of them stared at me, completely derailed. The script they had in their heads was in shreds. They came ready for a debate, ready to patronize me through my complaints, ready to wear my emotions down until I caved. They were absolutely not prepared for an immediate surrender. "Mom, sit down. Don't be like this." Connor started half-standing, panic creeping into his voice. It was one thing to ask me for the house. It was another thing entirely to watch me hand it over without a fight. "I'm not being like anything, Connor." I cut him off, grabbing my purse. "You said I was too difficult to reward. You're right. So, as of today, you don't have to try anymore. Keep the house. I'm out." "Wait, Mom. We have to organize the paperwork, the move," Harper blurted out, jumping to her feet. "My bags are already in the car. You can have a notary send me the paperwork. We have nothing left to talk about." I turned around and walked toward the front door. Chloe tried to stammer out some fake apology about how they didn't mean to upset me, but I didn't break my stride. I didn't slam the door. There were no theatrical tears. I just walked out into the sunny afternoon and shut the door softly behind me. I walked to my car, started the engine, and drove away down the street where my kids had learned to ride their bikes. Walking out of that door was surprisingly easy. I felt an enormous weight, one I hadn't even realized I was carrying, just slip off my shoulders and stay trapped within the four walls of that massive house. I drove straight to the downtown apartment. It wasn't the dark, drafty dump they pictured. Over the past week, without telling a soul, I had hired a crew to throw on a fresh coat of white paint, fix the old plumbing, and deep clean the place. I bought some fresh houseplants and fully stocked the pantry. It was small, sure, but it was mine. And for the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a sanctuary. That afternoon, I sat on my new sofa with my iPad and logged into my bank account. Just as I had planned, the credit cards Connor and Harper treated as their personal slush funds were officially canceled. I verified that the auto pays for the big house's homeowner's insurance, the premium internet, the water bill, and the landscaper were all deactivated. If they wanted the house, they were going to learn real quick what it actually took to keep it standing. I didn't block their numbers. Blocking them would have been an emotional reaction, a signal that they had hurt me. I just put them on silent. If they wanted to reach out, I'd see it when I felt like looking, not the second they demanded my attention. That first night, I slept like a rock. I didn't have to wake up at dawn to make anyone breakfast, and I didn't have to worry if the sound of the blender was going to annoy Chloe. I woke up late, brewed a strong pot of coffee, and sat out on my little balcony, watching the city wake up below. No one was judging me. No one was timing me. No one was grading my existence. On the third day, the phone on the kitchen counter vibrated and lit up. It was Connor. And just like I knew he would, he wasn't calling to check on me or apologize. He was calling because reality had just kicked his front door in. I took a sip of my coffee before hitting answer. I let it ring 4 times so I didn't seem eager. "Hello," I answered, keeping my voice breezy. "Mom, you finally answered," Connor said, his voice totally panicked. The smug superiority from Sunday was completely gone. "Listen, the landscaping crew didn't show up today, and Chloe tried to pay some bills online, but the Wi-Fi's cut off. I called the provider, and they said the account holder canceled the service." "What is going on?" "I moved out, Connor," I said, matter-of-factly. "Since you guys live there now, it only makes sense for the utilities to be in your name. I don't live there anymore, so I'm not paying for services I don't use." There was a heavy silence on the line. I could practically hear the gears grinding in his head as the math finally hit him. "But you could have at least warned us so we could transfer the accounts without everything getting shut off. Chloe has to work from home, Mom. This is so vindictive." "It's not revenge, honey. It's just admin," I replied. "You wanted the responsibilities of the house. Now you have them. Have a good day." I hung up before he could argue. Minutes later, my phone started lighting up with texts from Chloe. It was a barrage of paragraphs accusing me of being immature, trying to sabotage them, and being a control freak who couldn't let go. I read the first line and swiped the notification away. I wasn't playing her game. I wasn't going to give her any fresh screenshots for her group chat. I slipped on some comfortable shoes and went for a walk around my new neighborhood. I bought fresh flowers and a couple of books I'd always wanted to read, but never had the time for. Silence is a wildly powerful weapon, especially against people who are used to dragging you into the mud with them. I had decided I was going to stay clean. 2 weeks went by without us seeing each other. I heard through Joanne, my longtime neighbor and close friend, that the big house was in total chaos. Joanne called me laughing, saying she saw Connor out in the driveway, having a screaming match with a plumber because he refused to pay the $300 emergency weekend fee for a busted pipe. Chloe was constantly complaining about the dust, the dead leaves in the yard, and all the invisible labor I used to do, that they honestly thought just happened by magic. On a Tuesday afternoon, the buzzer to my apartment rang. I checked the peephole. It was Chloe. She was holding a paper bag and wearing her most rehearsed, overly sweet smile. I opened the door, but I didn't step back to let her in. "Hi, Elisa," she said, her voice dripping with fake sugar. "I was in the area and wanted to pop by and say hi. We brought you this." She reached into the bag and pulled out a small blue ceramic vase. It was a gift my husband had given me 20 years ago, and it always sat on the fireplace mantel. I recognized it instantly. Chloe held it out to me like she was presenting me with a Nobel Peace Prize. "We know how much you love this." She went on, dropping her gaze to look vulnerable. "The house just isn't the same without you, Elisa. Connor is so stressed out. I'm drowning between work and the yard. We'd really love it if you came back and helped organize things. You can take the in-law suite just like you wanted. We need you." I looked at the blue vase in her hands. It was beautiful, sure, and it held memories. But I also knew exactly what it was. It wasn't a gift. It was bait. They honestly believed my self-worth was tied up in the objects of that house, that they could buy back my free labor and infinite patience with a piece of old pottery. She offered me a vase in exchange for my freedom. My answer left her speechless. I didn't reach out to take the vase. I just let Chloe stand there awkwardly holding it. Her arms extended, the fake smile starting to twitch at the corners of her mouth. "It's a beautiful vase, Chloe," I said, my voice low and steady. "It looks perfect on the mantel in your new house. You can keep it." Confusion washed over her face. She blinked a few times slowly, lowering her arms. "Elisa, don't be stubborn. I'm literally handing you an olive branch. We're trying to fix things. Family is supposed to stick together, right? You're abandoning your son over a stupid misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," I replied, resting one hand on the doorframe. "I know exactly what you guys think of me. I know it from the way you talk to me, and I know it from the jokes you type under my dining table. I didn't abandon anyone. I just left a place where I was no longer wanted." Chloe opened her mouth to defend herself, to deny the group chat, to do what she always did, spin the narrative. But I didn't give her the floor. "Enjoy the house. Make sure you let the faucets drip when it drops below freezing, or the pipes will burst. Have a good afternoon, Chloe." I shut the door. I didn't slam it. I just pushed it gently until the deadbolt clicked. I stood in my entryway for a moment, listening to her angry, fast-paced footsteps echoing down the hall toward the elevator. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel the urge to call her back or over-explain myself. I had drawn a boundary, and for the first time in my life, I was standing on the right side of it. That night, I made myself a light dinner. I sat by the window and watched the city lights flicker on. I slept incredibly well, totally unbothered by anyone else's leaky pipes or secret group chats. I was the absolute master of my own space. 6 months later, my balcony had turned into a little green oasis. I had planted geraniums, mint, and sweet basil, and I spent my mornings tending to them in total peace. I even signed up for watercolor classes, something I had completely given up when Connor was born. My life had shrunk in square footage, but it had expanded massively in freedom. Yesterday, I met Joanne for coffee near my building. She told me that Connor and Chloe ended up putting the big house up for rent. They couldn't hack it. The property taxes, the endless roof repairs, and just the sheer physical toll of maintaining a home completely broke them. They moved into a cramped townhome across town, constantly blaming each other for the failure. As for Harper, she barely visits them because they don't have the space to host properly anymore. I stirred my coffee and just listened. I didn't feel giddy about their downfall, but I didn't feel pity either. I just felt a peaceful kind of indifference, like reading about bad weather in a city you don't live in anymore. "What about you, Elisa?" Joanne asked, smiling at how relaxed I looked. "I swear, you look 10 years younger." "A good night's sleep works miracles, Joe." I laughed and I meant it. They were right about one thing that Sunday I was too difficult to reward. But not because I asked for too much, because I noticed too much. I noticed the whispers, the eye rolls, the cruelty hiding behind a glowing screen. For years, I thought being observant was my curse. Now I know it was my salvation. In the end, I didn't need to fight for my territory or demand fake apologies. All it took was leaving a brass key on a table and walking out the door. I lost a massive house full of heavy furniture and worn-out walls, but in exchange, I got to keep myself. And without a doubt, that was the best move I ever made.